In the late 80s going into the early 2000s, Japanese sports cars were effectively killing the competition. For the most part, they were the undisputed drift kings, the affordable track weapons, straight line street legends, and had arguably the best styling for that era. The Japanese car manufacturers, you can say, had it all. That's not to say that American or Euro cars weren't great around that time, but there's no denying the supremacy of Japanese car culture, especially since many of their cars were attainable. Fast forward a little over a decade or two later from the early 2000s, and you start noticing an alarming trend. Maybe you've seen comments across the internet saying something along the lines of, man, the new insert Japanese sports car isn't as good as its predecessor. Or, what happened to insert Japanese car manufacturer? They don't make performance cars like they used to. Or my favorite, the Nissan GTR is so overrated and overpriced now. For that kind of money, you might as well buy a McLaren. Whatever you've read, heard, or experienced, there's no denying that something seems just a little bit off with the Japanese auto manufacturers. Are they getting too comfortable? Are they just profit hungry and focusing on high volume sellers now? Is hybridization and electrification taking precedence in their goal setting? Who knows? Listen, I'm not trying to deliberately bash Japanese sports cars. In fact, I still very much respect the new iterations of the NSX, Supra, so on and so forth. Would I get one if I had the money? Absolutely not. Why? Because in my opinion, the competition has gotten much better and arguably surpassed the Japanese manufacturers in nearly all performance metrics. Sure, you can still toss in the reliability trump card. I'll still give you that one, even though the Japanese don't make their modern cars as reliable as those of yesteryear. God damn it, I sound like Scotty Kilmer. Anyways, the first reason why I believe Japanese sports cars are struggling is having too much hype behind them, but not delivering on time. We've seen video after video after video about how the latest Acura NSX disappointed the majority of the car community simply because it didn't fit ABC criteria, especially since the hype and anticipation had been growing in its 11 or 12 year absence. People were just expecting more from it. Right off the bat, people were saying how the 2017 Audi R8 was the superior car and cost about the same. Also, more recently, we've seen the latest Toyota Supra, after taking an 18-year or so hiatus, already get roasted by many YouTubers simply because the new C8 Corvette effectively took, no, scratch that, stole the spotlight from Toyota. Pricing was also a factor, but I'll get to that in just a moment. After the FT1 concept in 2014, people were hoping to see something from Toyota around 2015 or 16 at the latest, only to get rather disappointed 4 more years later. Listen, I'm not saying the aforementioned Japanese cars aren't great. In fact, all of them are still performance animals in every right. But again, the competition is getting intense and it's becoming increasingly difficult to rationalize purchasing some of these Japanese flagships. And some of that rationalization has to deal with my second reason of why I believe Japanese sports cars are struggling, and that's pricing. Namely due to the fact that the competition is pricing rather aggressively. Take a new Subaru BRZ and Toyota 86 for instance, both priced around the mid 20Ks. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen some Mustang fanboy commenting about how their EcoBoost costs about the same, but has 1.5 times the power and more than double the torque, while running laps around the twins. I get it, the twins weren't designed for power, they were designed for handling. But nowadays, most average Joes don't care to take their cars to the track. That's a very niche group of car guys, and you can argue that, well, that's what Toyota and, Subaru intended. But big numbers at affordable prices sell. And if these Japanese auto manufacturers want to continue making these sports cars and justifying them to their upper management, they have to sell, at least a decent amount. And don't even get me started with the Civic Type R. A fantastic car, in my opinion, better than the competition in some ways, but when it was first released, everybody was ripping it for being a $35,000 front-wheel drive car and saying how the Golf R and Focus RS were the superior cars. Even 4-door sedan and coupe owners were saying how they could get XYZ car for the same price and smoke the Civic Type R in a straight line. Blah, blah, blah. Leave the Type R guys alone. Anyways, I digress. Let's take a look back at the 2020 Supra, priced around 50 to 60K without dealer markups. Of course, in 1999, the high-end Supra would cost you around $40,000. Adjusted for inflation to 2018 numbers, it's about 60 to 61,000. So to some degree, the modern Supra is actually a bargain, seeing as the base model will run you around $55,000 or so. However, when compared to the upcoming C8 Corvette having the base model priced at about $60,000, many critics are now dumbfounded. A mid-engine supercar-esque car with nearly 500 horsepower versus an effectively front-mounted German engine Japanese badged car? Sadly, the Supra's pricing is a little too close for comfort, and I'm willing to put money down that the C8 Corvette will easily outsell the Supra. You're welcome to come back to this video later and roast me if I'm proven wrong. Still not convinced how pricing can impact a person's decision? Well, here's another quick example. Take a nicely spec'd brand new 370Z Nismo. This puppy can nearly run you 50 grand, as opposed to a lightly used Shelby GT350 cost around or less than 50,000 and has a screaming flat plane V8 with nearly 200 more horsepower, much larger brakes, better suspension, and 4 seats with a sizable trunk. I'm not speaking as a biased American car fanboy. I'm actually speaking from the lens of an average Joe that has too much money to spare and wants a fast toy. 9 times out of 10, I'm inclined to believe that many folks would choose the Shelby over the 370Z. I know this isn't necessarily a fair comparison seeing as one is new versus lightly used, but that suffice it to say that when consumers are shopping for a new ride and have 50 grand at stake or at their disposal, they're going to look at both used and new cars. So regardless of where you stand on the Japanese versus American spectrum, or Euro for that matter, again, there's no denying that pricing their cars against tough competition is definitely hurting sales, thereby making it more and more difficult to justify producing another iteration of their sports cars. And I'd love to see the Japanese auto manufacturers continue to make sports cars because competition is a good thing. So what have the Japanese done in hopes of reigniting interest in their sports cars? Well, as many of you know, several brands tried working together. Fiat and Mazda made the Miata and Fiata, as I'll call it. Toyota and Subaru, we all know, partnered to create the famous twins, and more recently Toyota and BMW, of all manufacturers, partnered to create the new Z4 and 2020 Supra. It's no secret that, car manufacturers may exchange knowledge from time to time and parts, but the fact of the matter is Japanese sports cars are noticeably struggling, hence why they're even partnering up to begin with. However, I'm hopeful that one day soon the big 3 Japanese car brands in America, Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, will have their moment once more. After all, there's rumors about an updated set of twins in the BRZ and 86, the revival of an MR2, and another Z, possibly the 400Z, and god damn it, where's Godzilla? I'm hoping Nissan, gets to it. Only time will tell, but maybe these extended gaps between iterations is intentional, because when the Japanese design something, they take pride in creating a masterpiece. Alrighty guys, let me know what you think about modern Japanese sports cars. Was the 90s to early 2000s the prime? Or are we already seeing the dawn of a new era of Japanese supremacy? Comment your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.